Okay, hello everybody. This is Leslie Nips for Thank You for My Life, growing our skills with original healing sentences. It's really nice to see you all. Thank you for being here. I'm actually really excited about this. Healing sentences is one of my favorite topics. So I'm Leslie Nips. Most of you know me pretty well, but some of you, I might be new to you. I don't know. I am in the American Southwest, near a city named Albuquerque in New Mexico. And I've been doing constellations work, give or take about 15 years. And I enjoy doing these little workshops online every once in a while. A little bit of Zoom orientation before we dive in. Everyone's muted right now, and typical Zoom etiquette, invite people to keep yourselves muted. You have control over that. But keep yourselves muted if you are not speaking. Screen views, view in the upper right-hand corner. I'm going to leave that under your control. So if you want me to be the big thing while I'm talking, go over to view in the upper right-hand corner and choose speaker view. Or if you're one of those people kind of like me who likes to see lots of little faces, then you can have the gallery view. I could look a tiny bit distracted for the next few minutes, like I did just then, because I'm just checking. It's looking like people got their Zoom links. Yay! I had a Zoom link fail a couple of weeks ago, so I'm very glad that this is working well. But I am on the lookout for any last minute problems joining emails. You just noticed it's being recorded. So if you ask a question, in some way you become extra visible, just remember that when you ask a question. I am recording this to the cloud, so basically only the people speaking are going to be recorded. So you can keep that in mind as your choices around how to participate. As I said in the beginning, it is great when people at large events like this have their videos on, just so that the presenter has someone to present to. But we do understand that, you may be doing other things now as well. So that is also under your control right next to the mute button. And then the last thing I want to ask, because this is, I don't know how big the group is going to be. There's about 100 RSVPs. We'll probably have around 40 or 50 people here. When we get to breakout rooms, which is the option for doing some experiential work later on, you don't have to participate in that. So I am going to ask you right now if you can find the renaming function and put a number or a star at the front of your name. And that just really helps me weed out anybody who says, I do not want to be in a small group. Okay, I hope you do. So much of the heart of the learning is a little bit of practice. It won't be high vulnerability, but you might get some nice movements and experiences from it as well. And I'm giving you lots of time to figure that out. Basically, you drag your cursor over your own face, and a little 3 dots show up in the corner, right-hand corner of your face. You click on that, you will see rename, and then you can put a number or something or a star at the front, and then I will know not to put you in the small group. I see people ahead of my invitation. Chat. We may use chat a little bit here and there. But right now, I invite you, put in your name and where you're calling in from. I know some of you well enough to know that we are an international group. That's really awesome. And we're very international. Romania, it's very late in Romania. And it's early for people on the other side of the Pacific from me. So I'm not going to read them all out, of course. But put your own in and then scroll through, see where the people are right now as we gather in this place, Zoom land. Yeah. And it gives us a little bit of a feeling of who is this we that we are today. Thank you. We really are from all over the place. This is great. It's really lovely. a little bit of outline on the workshop, a bit of lecture in the beginning, and then I really am going to put us into some small group practice. I want us to give us some healing sentences or something you feel. Yeah, it's not really about the order of the words. It's about how the order of the words feels in the group or in you or in the client. Yeah, so that's what we're going to be playing around with a little bit. We're not going to have any breaks. It's only 2 hours. So if you have a need, take care of your need. Okay, invite you to do that. Little bit of group agreement before we get started. It's just helpful for something like this where there's, you know, a little bit of emotional vulnerability. Again, not massive emotional vulnerability today, but tech can be glitchy. Yeah, it's doing well so far, knock on wood, but it can get glitchy. So let's all be patient if any glitches do arise. If you have issues on your side, you're having a bad internet day, or you know, you have some hardware issue, please understand we can't troubleshoot that for you. You'll have to deal with that on your side. If you're experienced with other constellation facilitators, but not with me, the nice thing is that you'll recognize what I'm up to today. But it could also look a little bit different because there's a lot of styles and personalities and formats. So what I do today may look familiar or could look a little different. I hope you find that interesting and curious. If it turns out to be your cup of tea, totally fine. I just ask you to let me captain the ship today for the sake of everybody who signed up today, yeah? My plan is that in addition to some good learning, you also get a little bit of experience, like something that moves or shifts for you. However, anything you get is likely to be partial, given our context, yeah? So let the partial come in and see where it moves to in the days ahead, yeah? Let it be the start of something, perhaps, or maybe something that's already in progress for you. Last thing, of course, confidentiality. Some of you know each other. I know some of you are colleagues. You may be in a group with someone you know, because I'm not gonna fiddle with that. And so anything that's specific about somebody, just don't mention it anywhere else. Feel free to share about this event with other people, of course, by all means, but just leave all the personal details out. Yeah. And then lastly, of course, as I said in the beginning, recording, take that into account if you ask a question. Yeah, we're going to be recording. And at this point, your participation implies your consent. So if you can work with that, please raise your hand. Let me know that all sounds good. And if you have any major objections, some of you are your video is off, that's fine. Just shoot me an email. The breakout rooms are not recorded. No, don't worry about that. Yeah. Okay, that's it. That's all the boilerplate. It's so nice to see you. Just look at everybody for a moment and go, ooh, look at these people. Look at these interesting people. Yeah. If we have 2 screens at least of people, so, you know, click on the little blue arrow that will show you the other faces, just so you get a sense for who we are. We're not going to get to know each other intimately today, mostly, yeah, because it's a large group. But it's nice that we've come together to do these couple of hours. So let's ground together. Let's start with a little meditation. Do it the way, and if you're joining us while you're driving, take care of yourself. Don't meditate too much. If you're doing childcare, do what you can to participate. I like to close my eyes. Maybe take a few intentional breaths. You know how you like to ground yourself, to center yourself, to come back to yourself. Just notice how you're doing without judgment, without needing to change it. Whether you're having a great day or a challenging day, just there's plenty of room for whatever you're feeling. I'm going to invite you to imagine something that for some of you will make total sense and you'll really take to it. For some of you, this may be a kind of a puzzling thing to invite you to consider, especially if you're very new to constellations. Don't worry about it too much. Just allow something to arise as I invite you to imagine some way that you may be living out some pattern of loyalty to your ancestors that's not completely helpful to you. And you may get a very specific sense of that. Oh, the way I hide. Oh, the way I don't have enough money. Something very specific may come up, or it may be more general. But let yourself notice something. It's done out of love and belonging, but it may not be completely helpful for you. And as you notice that part of your life, in your mind's eye, notice your ancestors in any way that they come to you. I kind of see them on a hillside, with my parents at the bottom and their grandparents behind them, and then, further back generations up the hill, longer and longer rows, like a living family tree. Just imagine your ancestors in any way that they come to you. And take a moment and just notice what it feels like to be present to them. Does it feel awesome? Does it make you nervous? Does it feel a little blank? Without judgment, without having to change it. Just notice what it's like to be there with your ancestors, facing them, seeing them, perhaps being seen by them. And then I'm going to invite you to say in your mind's eye, or, if it works in your space, you can say it out loud. 4 healing sentences. I'm going to say them one at a time, and you say them after me. And if you're not feeling it, if you don't want to do it, then by all means, do what feels right to you for now. But these are the sentences that you say to your ancestors in front of you. Ancestors, I honor the dignity of your fate. I leave it with you. Thank you for my life. Bless me as I take what is best and choose a new path. And yes, you may change the words any way you want that feels right. Yeah. I will do it one more time. And again, you can change them. I honor the dignity of your fate. I leave it with you. Thank you for my life. Bless me as I take the best and choose a different path. And having said those sentences with your dignity, notice how it feels now with your eyes still closed, looking at your ancestors. How does it feel to be before them now? And perhaps check in with that loyalty pattern I invited you to notice when we started. Just notice how it feels, without judgment, without it needing to be different. And then take your time and come back. So just to share a real facilitator moment, I had the 4 sentences I wanted to say on my piece of paper. And at the last minute, I went, I need to change one of those a little bit. So that's, you have to feel into the field, yeah, and adjust. Yeah. It would be nice, obviously, we have too large of a group here to hear from everyone. To hear a couple of brief shares of something you noticed about that. And you're gonna have to use your little digital hands. You go down to reactions and you'll find the little reactions is down at the bottom, not far from chat. And then it says raise hand, just because. And Susie, you're clapping, but that's okay. We'll work with clapping.
Close. I didn't put my specs on early enough. Noticed when I first was putting them up the hill, they were all disorganized and it was unclear. But after the sentences, it became really clear and really nicely structured.
Oh, there you go. Very nice. You never know where these images in the mind are going to go. Yeah, thank you. So we have 2 more hands. That's all we're going to do for now, but we'll hear from more others later. Kylie, so good to see you again. Such a long time.
Hi.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite cool. One thing that I realized was that for my mum's side of the family, which is my Indigenous side, so is that I'm actually doing things for the first time in that side of my family. So my frame of mind beforehand, because I was thinking, oh, I'm not doing good at finishing some things, but it's because we haven't even done these things on that side of my family before. So I was like, oh, so just having a bit more compassion for myself in that way. So yeah, that was an unexpected but lovely gift.
It's really moving to notice when we're the first one to do something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, sometimes it's obvious, like college, that's one of those things that we tend to know about, but there's all kinds of things where we're the first one or one of the firsts. And that's worth noting. And the courage we've been bringing to try and do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Kylie. That's great. Suzanne.
Yeah, thanks, Leslie. I felt when I was looking at my ancestors as a bit of sadness, and I could feel a contraction kind of in my chest. And then after doing that, it's almost like I felt them behind me and I was just facing out into this huge choice and possibility, and could feel my heart expanding and my breath kind of deepened. And it was just this really like this freedom opening up. It was really beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. And I'm glad to hear those 3 stories from all of you. If any of you had something tricky, yeah, or it felt stuck, or didn't feel so thoroughly yummy, it doesn't mean anyone did anything wrong. It means we're feeling more of the system, or the system isn't ready for those words yet. And that's worth noticing. Something else has to happen first. Yeah, this is a facilitator observation. You put out there a perfectly good healing sentence, but everyone goes, no, ah, right? Means something else probably has to happen first. Yeah, yeah. So if you had any stuckness or stickiness in that, just ask, oh, what got skipped? What's important that needed maybe to come first? Yeah, okay. And in any way, any of these exercises feel sticky, I invite you into that kind of curiosity. Yeah, yeah. What could be going on here that's really honest about my system? Yeah, and might point me in the direction. So thank you, everybody who shared. I'm going to spend a few, not much time talking, but a little bit of time talking, okay? And I'm going to share screen. There we go. And we actually have to start out with a different topic when we're talking about healing sentences. And this is one that I always hope everyone knows about, and this is a review, but I always find out that there's some people who've been through whole training that have not heard of this. So it's really important material. And I do whole workshops just on this topic. But just this is a brief refresher, primary and secondary emotions. For those of you who have Bert Hellinger's book, Love's Hidden Symmetry, this is summarized on these pages. Primary emotions come, do the job, and go. They give us dignity and weight, and they're attractive, not in the sense that they're pretty, but in the sense of people are drawn to them. When you have them, people want to come closer. Secondary emotions, they loop. They generate more of the same. They feel really compelling and necessary, but they don't actually end up accomplishing anything. For you, any of you who've ever taken like a rubber bat to some cushions and gotten out your anger, and it felt really good, but the next week you could do it again, right? That's more secondary emotions, yeah? When they're in our constellation space, they tend to lessen our dignity and weight. They assert helplessness, and they're unattractive, not meaning unpretty, but in the sense of people may be drawn to temporarily to want to try and help, but eventually people figure out that they can't help and they eventually move away. They get tired, yeah? This is really important because primary emotions, Bert Hellinger is kind of a bear about this. So is Ursula Franke. She's another early German facilitator, is that healing and change cannot happen if we're mired in secondary emotions, okay? They can only happen if we get access to primary emotions. However, representatives, the first thing they often notice are secondary emotions. Yeah, they have a lot of blame or accusation or a certain kind of looping quality that shows up in what they share. Yeah, and it's got this slightly compulsive quality to it. So as facilitators, we want to help people move into primary emotions and constellations. We want to slow them down. I watched Bert Hellinger's last year's. If anyone tried to like dash across the constellation space, he would insist they slow down. Invite representatives into their dignity, to discourage play acting and drama or blaming or dismissiveness, that kind of thing. And if it shows up, you ask, these are two very powerful questions. What's underneath that? And what does that mean really? What's going on? What's really important? It's all his fault. Okay, got it. What's really important about that? And they'll go, but it's really his fault. No, I got it. I got it. That's what's important about that. What's underneath that? And then they'll finally take a breath and they'll say, it broke my heart when he left. Yeah, now we've got something. We've got something that can allow for some movement. And healing sentences are one of the main ways we shift constellations from secondary to primary emotions. However, rapport and timing is also really important. The right healing sentence at the wrong time doesn't matter very much. Yeah. Classic healing sentence, you are big and I am small. Yeah. We all know that if we do that too early, it's going to be rejected. Yeah. So we can't simply maneuver a constellation of primary emotions with our authority. If we try too hard, it can be at the cost of trust and rapport. So timing is really critical. As a facilitator, you can see what's needed out there, but it may require something else first, which is what I was saying about if you had some stickiness in the opening meditation, maybe the timing was off. They're not bad sentences, but something else needed to happen first. Yeah. So notice as facilitators, if you're a facilitator, when your fabulous, wonderful healing sentences don't work, what might have been missed? What might have need to come first? And this is a quotation from me. If there is still resistance, something hasn't been included yet. Okay. So there are two kinds of healing sentences that I have observed. I think most of you have observed them in your contexts. Original or stock sentences, and these are a nearly universal expression of a primary reality that gives relief to a system to have it heard. Okay. And these are the ones that you hear over and over and over and over again. I see you. It happened. What I did cannot be undone. Yeah. Don't worry, I'm going to be sharing a list of them in a few minutes. And then there are custom sentences. These are the ones that a facilitator shapes from the information coming from the field in the moment. This workshop is about number one, not about number two. I do workshops on number two, but that's not today. Okay. I often hear from students, how do you remember these stock sentences? How do you use them? How do you bring them up in the moment when you need them? And that's what got me thinking maybe this workshop would be helpful for people. Okay. I do want to say that healing sentences aren't everything. There are other ways to help a system to move into primary emotions. Sometimes it's rearrangements of the order. You have the parent who's on the floor and the child who is standing, reverse positions, or have people who are not looking at each other, have them look at each other. Yeah, there are different ways to help the system to move into primary emotions. But healing sentences, and for some of you who are trained in silent or nearly silent, much less wordy traditions, which is not me because I'm a wordy person, but if you've been trained in those traditions and they're great, particularly Bert Hellinger's last years, very quiet constellations, then healing sentences aren't the main thing you're using. However, even in those contexts, you may say them from time to time, and then they have incredible power, right? The more silent and quiet your constellations go, the more power a single healing sentence can have, yeah? So before we get into the list, I want to say a couple of things. There's no formal list, okay? You can't find the book on stock healing sentences. There's no official anything anywhere. These are just ones that are heard frequently. And to be more specific, ones that are heard frequently in my environment. There's a lot of people here from Australia and New Zealand right now. Yeah. You have an environment where you may have developed your own local healing sentences that you don't hear in Russia or you don't hear in Turkey. And then if you go to Turkey, you might have some local ones that you might not hear somewhere else. So it's not a formal list. Many of them do go back to Hellinger. So if you read his books or watch his videos, you will hear some of these. But a lot of them also just came from other facilitators, and they've mostly lost their provenance in a sense. They've just become part of the culture. Yeah, and you hear them. I want to share an example of an experience I had, because this is what I recommend to people, and I'll talk more about this later. But this is what I recommend to folks about how to start acquiring them. I just love this example. So I was at a Stefan Hausner workshop up in Seattle, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago. And he was doing a constellation with somebody. I don't remember if it was a divorced set of parents or very estranged, high conflict situation between the parents. Quite a common situation, yeah? And the problem with divorces or lots of estrangement in our parents is that it tends to cause a split in us, right? There ends up with this either or, this loyalty. Do I with dad, with mom, or whoever the characters are in the story. And so here were the sentences. It landed in me just hugely because I had parents who fought like cats and dogs my whole life. Okay. And I want to say the word "it" in the sentence I'm about to say is basically everything they experienced to bring me into the world. Okay. Dear parents, I see what it cost you. I leave it with you. Thank you for my life. I have used those words a gabillion times since then. And when I heard it, it landed in me for Leslie. I wasn't in the constellation, I was in the circle, yeah. But I also took a moment and went, those are a keeper. That's a useful set of phrases. Yeah. So I'll say them again because it's actually a couple of them. Yeah. Dear parents, I see what it cost you. I leave it with you. Thank you for my life. Yeah. Who here resonates with that one? Who went, yeah? Yeah. Yeah. And for those of you who do this work on a regular basis, this will just come up over and over and over and over again because we get tangled up in our parents' conflicts. It's impossible to avoid when we're little children, right? Yeah. So this is what I invite you to. When something rings your bell, just bookmark it. If you're in the circle, maybe you can actually write it down, right? But try and let these ones that really, like, not all of them are going to resonate for you. That's fine. But when something really goes in, see if you can hold that on as one to keep. So the first thing I want to do is maybe 3 or 4 or 5, and the rest of you do it in the chat. I want to invite you to think right now, we're going to let your favorite stock healing sentence, okay? Which is a very strange thing to say. But what is one of your favorites, or if you're a facilitator, one of your constant go-tos, you use it all the time? Or maybe one you just, like I just described, you had a really strong experience with. And so read those as they're starting to come through. And yeah, I'd like to hear a couple. Sarah, these are very powerful when we can hear them out loud.
A favorite powerful sentence, healing sentence is, bless me if I do it a different way.
Awesome. Yeah. Let's hear out loud a couple more. You can raise your little digital hand and read the others as they're coming up. Aubrey.
One of the most powerful statements for me when I very first started was with Marguerite Koning, and it was, I give back all your responsibility to you.
Awesome. So I invite you to take a moment and just say that with your dignity, and we can all feel it.
Yeah, I give back all responsibility to you.
There you go. Thank you. Gregory, what's one for you?
I'm not quite sure if it qualifies as healing sentence, but I feel like sometimes when there's sort of leaning towards resolution, but it can't quite go there in a kumbaya type moment, and just honoring like not yet, or like it's a real like honors the dignity of that's where things are, that's where it is,
Yes.
not quite yet, or not yet, or something like that.
Yeah, healing sentences don't have to be all resolvey and happy, right? They can name something incomplete. Basically, healing sentences, that's what they're for, is to name it as it is. And it can be a great relief, particularly a not yet, because we know that. And we've been trying to make it happen, but not yet. It's really nice. Thank you, Gregory. Thank you for broadening the frame a little bit. Suzanne, one more.
Yeah, I thank you for what you could give me, but I was just thinking during the talking, give me time.
There you go.
Give me time.
Nice. Okay. So everyone, again, read through these. Thank you for what you could give me. It's bigger than all of us. That's a really powerful one that I forgot. Okay, one more. Yile, I probably won't say it right.
Perfect, that was correct. So the one that just popped up, which has been really powerful for me and others, is you do belong.
Say that one more time, real simple, and everyone just hear it.
You do belong.
Yeah. Thank you. The wonderful thing about these sentences, again, timing still matters. And even out of context, they have effect. Yeah, we haven't set up a constellation, but those words still seem to have some power. Yeah, some resonance. Yeah. Sometimes when I'm with students, I'll just make up a scenario and all of a sudden we're crying because we can feel the whole situation and it was totally made up, right? I see you now, I choose you. I leave your fate with you. You give, I take. Yeah, so read these. Yeah. So now I'm gonna go in and this list that I have is utterly arbitrary, my friends. It doesn't have some of the ones that some of you just came up with, yeah? But I was racking my brain the last couple of weeks and this is what made it to paper. So I will be sharing this all with all of you, so you don't need to capture all of these. I'm just looking for. And I put these under the categories of different orders of love, okay? These categories are not tidy either. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read them. This is ludicrous, but I'm just going to read them somewhat contemplatively. And then I'm going to go back and for the 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 that need a little bit of context. A lot of these you don't need, context doesn't matter, or the context is obvious. But if for a few of them, the context actually helps explain the context in which they're powerful. Okay, so the first one is honoring what is. I see you. It's good to be seen. I honor the dignity of your fate. I see what it cost you. It happened. It's over. I am dead and you are alive. I will be with you eventually, but not for a while. Please look kindly upon me as I stay for a while. Honoring order and role. Thank you for my life. I am small and you are big. Naming relationships or naming order. People are often very moved by, just saying, dear uncle, you know, I see what you carry. I leave it with you. You gave me what you could give. I will take it and put it to good. Please bless me as I choose a different way. And from bigger to smaller, life continues well with you. With respect to belonging, you are the right mother or father or parent for me. You belong. I belong. I have a place in my heart for you. I honor the bond. I am the parent. You are the child. Balance of giving and taking. This is where I've put a lot of things that have to do with couples or with the coupleness between our parents. I honor the bond. I take responsibility for my part. I bless you as you take another. Please bless me as I take another. When I met you, I knew what I was getting into. Thank you for being who I asked you to be. Thank you for the children. When I look at you, I love your other parent in you. You may have both of us. You may have your other parent. And then taking responsibility. I take responsibility for what I've done. I injured you greatly. What I have done cannot be undone. What you have done cannot be undone. Leave the guilt with me. I leave the guilt with you. Going through this, I felt like they were mostly pretty explanatory. I have a place in my heart for you as a way to shift from entanglement, but some way to honor the suffering we know about our forebears. Yeah. And then this is something you only do very late in the constellation. If there's been estrangement or violence in a relationship, particularly between parents, this is giving everyone in a relationship the respect of it at some level being in on the deal. Yeah. It raises, especially when we have parents who are labeled victim and perpetrator, it helps raise the dignity of both members a little bit. I think that's all I need to really explain. And obviously, you may be sitting here of thinking of some more, and you brainstorm more in the chat. And if you see any missing, I'm going to save the chat and send that to people too. Put them in there. Yeah. So how to learn them? Okay. Some of you obviously have internalized a bunch of them already, but for those of you who are anxious and insecure about it, or you just want to keep learning more, here's the number one way to do it. Go to a lot of constellations with a lot of different facilitators. You'll keep it, or even go to a lot of constellations with the same facilitator, because they'll have about a half dozen they use all the time. And then those 6 will really go into your head. Yeah, that was very true of me. The teachers I had in my first few years, I went to all of their constellations for many years, and those healing sentences are just part of my go-tos. I will never forget them because they just got into the muscle memory. Yeah. Read constellation books, particularly those with case studies. Okay, those are especially helpful. So when it comes to Bert Hellinger, he has a lot of his early books in particular have case studies in them. Love's Hidden Symmetry has them. One of my favorites, even though it has some dated information, is once again, this book keeps on disappearing, and then I re-find it, and then it disappears. But it's an early book called Farewell, which is about war and victims and perpetrators. Some of his approaches are a little out of date, like excluding murderers. He eventually stopped doing that. But that's where I get a lot of my best sentences about death. Really good ones in there. That's where I got the please look kindly upon me if I stay for a while. Very sweet, that disentanglement from the dead. Yeah. When you're at a workshop, like I was at Stefan Hausner's, I'll get back to you, Susie. Let 1 or 2, like, notice you had a little explosion around a sentence, and then try and write it down, or if you're representing or something, try and lodge it somewhere. Any workshop you go to, try and remember 1 or 2. Yeah, yeah. You're not going to remember all of them, right? But if one really moved you, keep it in place. And then finally, watch your own facilitating. Those of you who facilitate regularly, every once in a while, something will come out of your mouth that is brand new and really explodes the system. And you're like, oh, that's a keeper. I can reuse that one. Okay. Those are the ones I usually have to jot down afterwards, because there's a ton of amnesia around facilitating, right? But every once in a while I hear myself saying something, I go, ooh, that one's good. And then feel free to learn them any way that you want to learn them. Flashcards or an old, like I would never do flashcards. But if that sort of thing works for you, then use that approach. Okay, so we've had a couple of questions. Helga has given one of the answers for where to get Love's Hidden Symmetry. The dilemma, of course, is I know, Susie, you're not in the United States. So, possible shipping costs. The publisher, Jeffrey Zeig, sells it, but again, I got to assume there's going to be shipping costs. And then I just heard about another one recently, which it was someone put it in a Facebook post, but again, I'm pretty sure it was a US source. So, I mean, maybe you guys need to go to the publisher and say, can we buy 30 of these and get a deal somehow? And then you're a source. I don't, wherever you are in the world. But if you're willing to pay shipping costs, Helga's source will work. Okay.
Leslie, may I offer, I don't know who gave it to me. I've got a PDF of Love's Hidden Symmetry.
So I have very mixed feelings about that PDF.
Yeah,
I believe it's quite illegal. I know it's out there. It can be found. If people don't have those kinds of scruples, reach out to Suzanne. It's actually online. Someone uploaded it online. But that means somebody isn't getting royalties. So I have a very funny feeling about that. However, if you can't get it for a reasonable price, I understand, find some way to pay it forward. I don't know. But it is, somebody has put it online. I think if you really Google it or reach out to Suzanne, she might be able to help you with that. Again, I do know some of these books are harder to get in certain corners of the globe than it is in other regions. Okay, so I'm going to move us into some exercises in a minute, but I just want to see if there are any questions about any of this. I don't want to go to the rabbit hole of sort of general facilitator questions, which I can nerd out on. But if you have questions about the healing sentences, yeah, Carol, hey there, good to see you.
In my collecting of any book that I could ever get on constellation, I found this book and it's healing sentences.
Well,
To be
that's crazy.
To be honest, I've never used it, but I just opened it. And it looks pretty good. It explains when you would use certain sentences.
Would you put the title and author into the chat, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I'd be very interested in, I mean, part of the dilemma with healing sentences is that you kind of can't prepare for them. It's very hard to go, oh, if I have a dead person on the floor, then I say these 2 or 3. Or if I have a client who's trying to be big with the parents, I do these couple. Because, you know, if you notice that the client is being big with respect to their parents, and you say, client, will you please say you are big and I am small? It could work beautifully, or it could be a train wreck, because the timing can be off for that, right? The parents may not feel safe enough yet to say that too. So I'd be very interested in the writer's guidance on how to sort of bring them in. I'd be very curious about that. Yeah, Roxanne. Thank you, Carol.
So recently I came into relationship with a situation where someone had ancestors who owned slaves.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any wisdom words? I have heard my ancestors benefited when yours did not.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. It is somewhat contextual. When we have perpetrator ancestors, one of the questions you're going to have as facilitators is whether it's useful for the issue the client is dealing with to bring in the victims or not. Sometimes it's about that and sometimes it isn't. So if it is, then yes, a sentence like that would be very useful. Having worked in the space of American slavery a good bit, I have found the African ancestors kind of saying, leave us out of this. And getting a little cranky about it. Like, this is not our problem, right? So, I mean, the things like, I leave the guilt with you. I will take what is best and put it to good. Yeah. In memory of your guilt, not to pay it off, by the way, that I like to help clients shift from the notion of doing it to pay back or doing it to make better, but instead to do it to honor. Yeah. Sometimes the ancestors can come through honestly with the sentence like, we so wish, something like, and now I'm more in custom healing sentences land, but I've been in the space of, we wish it to be different for you. Yeah. We really bless you to choose a different way. Like to find that place of regret, right? Yeah. So those are some things. I think it's very important when we're dealing with massive scale perpetrations like this, that we be very wary of nice sentences. It's interesting. I was just reading a little bit of Farewell, where of course we're dealing with Nazism, right? And mass murder. And one of the perpetrators was really ready to lie down with the dead. And Hellinger turned to him and said, you don't get off that easy. Which I thought was a great Hellinger moment. You don't get off that easy. No, you can't lay down with them. So you have to look out for those sort of funny ways in which the system might look for an easy way out. And
Yeah.
only something that feels really strong in primary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the only thing that's going to help, right? Yeah. Yeah. And I think as the descendants of these ones, and I'm one of them, standing with some, Bert Hellinger's a very strong sentence. This isn't a healing sentence, but to be alive is to be guilty.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we stand in the knowledge that I am here because my ancestors were what they were? How do I stand in that? Yeah. Yeah. So big issues, big topics. Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes you need to corral your group to not go for the easy answers. Right. Yeah. Because we all want it to feel better. Yeah. Sometimes we need to, like Gregory was saying, something like the not yet, something like, this is horrible. Farewell, that's Bert Hellinger, very early Bert Hellinger book. Okay. I'll take two more very quick questions because I want to move into some practice. Julie.
Oh, not a question, just a comment about not to go too quickly to the letting people off the hook. Is I recently had an experience of somebody using a healing sentence, but it was used as it felt really weak because they hadn't actually named what the issue was. So they said something about like, I'll leave your fate to you, but it was like it hadn't been named, and that felt premature. And so also along those lines is watching like the euphemisms if the thing hasn't been called out directly and given that dignity.
Yes. That's a really interesting thing. I'm a big fan of Stefan Hausner likes to quote Thomas Hubel, specificity is love. So that abortion, that lost love in war, that child who died in the cholera epidemic, there's something very powerful about the specificity of things. And there are also times when something non-specific can be really powerful and helpful too. It's very much an it depends. Just as a, for instance, sometimes I have clients who are not ready to reveal all the context of something they're still working on shame about. And so we need to keep it kind of vague. And again, back to Gregory, one of the things about constellations is we take the step we can take, that the system can honestly integrate. And we can feel that. So if it felt weak, I believe you that it was weak. And there are times when doing it somewhat vaguely can feel like what the system can do now. And the whole group feels that, like, whew, that was actually a big step for this group. Okay. So, but I hear you there for sure. Gregory.
Yeah, I had one, it's like 1.5 questions, but like sometimes when I'm in a constellation, you know, when people are talking and they don't say, like sometimes people say things and maybe it's not the right thing to say. I mean, is part of the facilitator role in like healing sentences to stop or like to make sure that things aren't being said that to correct people's sentence. I mean, to correct people's sentences, like, you know, people want to say things, they want to talk a lot, and
they want to help, they want to offer up their forgiveness or whatever it is. That's a little bit off topic because it's a little bit more to sort of custom healing sentences and representative management and helping a group move from secondary to primary feelings. But yes, this is part of the job, is helping people whose first thing they're noticing is something secondary, and help them move into something primary. You bet. And we're not going to get to that too much today, I'm afraid. But thank you for that, Gregory. What I want to do now, I think, is just to follow up on that, Gregory, because sometimes the group can lose energy around that. Sometimes you need to let it happen a little bit, because if you interrupt too hard, you'll lose rapport and the group will stop trusting you. You can't be too harsh with a group, particularly if you're new to the work. Sometimes you need to let something unwind a little bit, even if it's like, it's so helpful. Yeah. And at some point you have to feel, oh, I need to nip this in the bud because it's lowering the energy or the dignity of the group. Yeah. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put some sentences, some pairs of sentences into the chat. And I'm going to ask y'all you have a couple of choices. You cut and paste this somewhere else, and because I'm going to send you into groups and you're not going to be able to see this. That's why I say this. Or just go ahead and choose a pair now. Because in this little exercise, I'm going to invite you to choose a pair to play with. Okay? Play with. That's a slightly lightweight way to put it. But I invite you to choose one that feels like maybe new to you or would be especially useful to you. Yeah. But you're going to be in a dyad, 2 people. Okay. And you're each going to get a turn. Let's say it was me and Susie right now. Susie and I would say, hi. And then we choose who goes first. And then Leslie would say, I'll go first. And my sentence is, I see you, it's good to be seen. Okay. And I would be me. Susie would be my ancestors. Start out by just reporting what you notice very briefly. This feels a little awkward. We feel a little distant. You know, we'll share a little bit briefly. Yeah. Then I would say the first sentence. I see you. Say it with your dignity. Say it with some simplicity. Let it rest for a minute, not a whole minute, but for a good pulse. And then when it feels right, Susie, as the ancestors, would respond with, it's good to be seen. And let that rest for a moment. And then do it another 1 or 2 times, okay? I see you. Yeah. A few pulse or 2, it's good to be seen. Just do that a few times, no more than 3. You can overdo a healing sentence. And then when you're done, very briefly in your dignity share, I feel some tears coming up and I feel really present. Yeah. And then the other one will share, oh, me too. Yeah, I feel like you want me to be here as my descendant, you know, whatever it is. Yeah. And then release that, and then the other person go. Okay. So choose one of these pairs, or if you want to come up with your own pair that you want to practice with. There's always a few groups that just don't play by the rules, and that's fine. And as the ancestors, just do the sentence that the person functioning as the client wants you to say. Do not ad lib as the ancestor. Okay. Say the sentence that the person whose turn it is has asked you to say in response. Okay. And just so again, a little check-in. What does it feel like? Say the sentences slowly and with dignity 2 or 3 times. And then share what it feels like then. Notice if anything has changed. End the constellation, switch. You do not need to change. The second person who goes can choose a totally different set of sentences or the same one, doesn't matter. Okay. Any logistical questions about that? Okay. Give me a minute. I'm going to give you 15 minutes, which is about 5 to 6 or 7 minutes each with a little bit of padding. But I will need a minute to do this. And if we end up with, uneven groups, and obviously I'm just going to need a little time for the very few number of people who have asked to not to do this. There's just a small group of you who have asked to not do this. And everyone is going to get an invitation. Just don't accept it, okay? And there's going to be one group of 3. So with 15 minutes, that gives you a solid 5 minutes each. I think I got it. Let me make sure I put in the time. Okay, there you go. Oh, there were some questions, sorry. If you're still here with questions, you can do it any way you want. Everyone accept the invitation. If you haven't done that yet. Regina, are you going to join? Okay. So you're not joining a group. Okay. Give me 1 second. But go ahead and rejoin your room. I'm going to send someone to you. Don't forget to rename yourself. I see a few ancestors still out there. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Well done. So I have one more exercise for us. It's a little bit different, but before we do that, I just want to, couple of shares, brief shares. What was that like? I mean, we're creating a contrived situation here, but if it's close to something enough, something will happen. So Caroline, did you want to share?
Me? Oh.
No, you just said you were unmuted. I didn't know if that meant you wanted to share. You don't have to, you're not required.
I'll introduce myself. Sorry. Yeah. No, I didn't. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah, Suzanne.
What we both noticed was we did it 3 times and how much deeper it went each time. It's really amazing, how much deeper it was.
And for your own, what was the before and after?
The before was
And you may not remember, that's fine.
no, it was sort of, asking them to bless me, but it was just the nuance of it, the intonation, the depths. It just went deeper. That's all I could say. And my partner said more ancestors came behind. They were gathering bigger and bigger, and that, there was something more solid in me that developed and more color around me. So there was something there that was solidifying and deepening.
Awesome. Thank you. What's kind of moving about that, I mean, many things, of course, but is that just saying those sentences, whatever they were, included more ancestors just by saying the words, which is what we're up to in constellations, is including, seeing more, honoring what is, right? Yeah. Thank you. Another share. We just want to hear one or two or three of these just so we can put some meat on the bones.
I'll share.
Julie, yeah, and then Sarah.
My partner shared that it seemed like it was a younger version of myself that started with the first time. And then on the second and third times, like I was growing into my present self, my adult self.
No. And there's the movement from secondary to primary. Because the younger self is the trauma self. It's that looping old business that hasn't landed yet. Yeah. Yeah.
It also felt like the first time it was more of a pleading, like from a really small place, that like almost pleading, begging.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Which is a very honest emotion. It just doesn't get us anywhere. Unless we could turn that into a primary emotion like, I beg you, Papa. That would probably do something, right? Yeah. Which is not very pleading, but it names the experience. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Sarah.
My partner and I shared, we both got the same, we wanted to share about leaving it with the ancestors. And I've done that. I do that all the time. I mean, I do it to myself. I do it on hiking. I'm always doing it. And so it felt very comfortable for me. And then, but it was a slow process when it was time for me to talk to my ancestors. And it turns out they haven't been processing it themselves. And they were surprised that, using my words, that they could finally see me. And so it was a huge step that even with all the work that I've done, I didn't realize we haven't even taken that first step in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little bit like being with a partner and we say something frequently and then one day they go, oh my gosh, I think I'm hearing you. And you can tell they're finally hearing you. Or maybe you've seen it differently with more of your dignity and clarity. But it's the difference between speaking into the void and having it land with someone. Dan Siegel calls it feeling felt, which I think is a really, really lovely way of putting it. Yeah. Thank you, Sarah. Okay. So I want to spend our last little time here doing one more, if we may, okay? And this is meant to work the muscles of figuring out the sentence. I meant to put this in when you all came back. This is the link I'm going to send to all of you. This is the Google Doc slides I was just sharing with you. So all the sentences are in there. So if you're able to click on that and have that handy, at least most of you, some of you may go, it's past my technical abilities right now. But if enough of you can do it, then we should have it in all the breakout rooms. But these are all the sentences. Now, you may not need this because a lot of you have them handy anyway, okay? But what I'm going to invite you to do is we're going to go into the same dyad. I'm going to invite you to choose a dyad in your life that you want to explore, and some examples. you and money, you and food, you and your body, you and your work or your business, you and an illness or condition that you have, you and a specific person in your life, although for now you may not want to do your parents because this is going to be a very small space and we don't want to crack open everything. But if you're up for it, then by all means, choose a parent. But you and something. It doesn't have to be the thing that's causing you the biggest suffering in your life right now. It should be something that has some weight. You're genuinely interested in exploring. So make that decision now, you and something, okay? And decide what that something's going to be. Okay. And again, you'll show up with each other, decide who's going to go first, and you let the other person know. Let's just say I'm doing this with Bud. I just happen to choose the person who's square below me. And I say, Bud, I'm going to be me, and would you be food? Okay. And he says, sure. And then once again, do a little report, so step into those, okay? And Bud, you don't actually have to do anything right now, but I appreciate you adjusting your camera. Just very briefly, if it's me and food, or I don't even remember what I chose, me and food. I would say food seems very big and I feel very small, okay? And then food will say what they're feeling, yeah? Okay, just so you have the baseline before you say any sentences, okay? And then I invite you, some of you may have enough skill that you start coming up with primary statements, healing statements that are more custom. But if you can find something from the standard list, and you can just try stuff and notice it doesn't work, it doesn't do anything, right? Or, the one I feel moved to right now to say to food is, I see you. Which it never would have occurred to me to say to food, right? That's not a food healing sentence, but in this moment, and Bud, if you just said back, it's good to be seen.
You want me to say it now? It's
Yeah.
good to be.
Yeah. So something just happened there for me, my constellation, even though it was kind of ragged and everything. Yeah. Yeah. So I really want to invite you. I mean, I had 3 ideas come to my mind that aren't standardized, but in order to practice these original healing sentences, I invite you to try some of them. Yeah. I might say, it's good to be seen. Or, try thank you for my life. That's an interesting one to say to food. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. And so just try some of these, and then at the end, share what it feels like now. Okay. And some of you are going to go off and do this your own way. I understand. But give yourself a chance to use some of these original healing sentences. Hillary, does the rep then choose based on what they're feeling? This is going to be a little hard to manage, but it would be nice if the rep responded with the corresponding response to whatever it is. Yeah. Now it really depends. The main thing is really the main speaker in this is going to be the client. Okay. And just try some of these sentences and see which ones seem to help. Okay. And then the representative can try some things, that food could say to me, thank you for my life. And we can both agree that feels really weird, right? But that's also a useful experience to notice. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to give you 20 minutes for this. Okay. I want you to do 10 minutes each on this. Okay. Regina, I assume you still would prefer not to be in a pair? I just want to make sure because I was a little confused about it before. You can just thumbs up and say, yeah, I don't want to be in a group. Excellent. Perfect. Thank you. Everyone have a sense of what you're up to? Okay, breakout rooms. Just see if anyone's dropped out or anything. Nope. Okay, there you go. Remember to rename yourself and mute yourself. Any chance you may have been unmuted when you left your meeting?
Can you mute me, Leslie? I just can't seem to find where.
Okay,
I'm muted.
I got it. Okay. So before we leave, which is pretty soon, I just wanted to put into the chat some upcoming opportunities. That's not the right one. That's not the one I wanted to put in there. Oh, well. Anyway, I'm doing online constellations on the 22nd. So the links are correct. If you want to do some online constellation stuff. Also, my training comes up in the fall, online training. You can check out that information. So how was this? Yes, and I'll send you all follow-up emails as well, Carolyn. So what did you notice? What was lovely? What was sticky? What surprised you? Just a couple of shares here as we bring this to a close. Aubrey, I see your hand up. And then Liz.
I am in awe, like right now, of, I mean, this work always amazes me, but just the simplicity. And I was going to do something and then I just felt something else want to come in, and it was nature. And I'm still getting moved by what happened. It just touched me so much. And that was just really powerful. Yeah.
So you did you in nature?
In nature. And it was kind of the size like you did. It was like, you know, I wanted to say you were the big one, but it was just like when it came in, it was, you are so big. It was so big. And then I felt it coming in and I went, and you're part of me. And I was like, holy shit. And it just, yeah, and I felt really emotional, and it was just holding. And I felt this whole shift in my body, like I was getting lowered down into a completely different dimension.
Yeah, it's nice to do non-problem constellations. Me and my spirit animal, me and nature, me and my soul, me and, you know, Jesus, if you like Jesus, you know, that kind of thing. It's nice to do those because they're very resourcing and surprising. So thank you for bringing that in, Aubrey. I'm glad you did something like that. Liz, good to see you again.
Good to see you too, Leslie. I offer this because I feel like there might be others in the group who'll benefit from it. But I couldn't decide. My partner and I have had a really challenging week, and I couldn't decide whether to constellate my partner or to constellate money. And so Susie and I actually did it blind, and she put them on little pieces of paper. and she stepped into one at a time. And the first one I had a very tense relationship with, and I actually was like, oh God, that might be my partner and I in this moment. And the second one I had this like joyous, like, let's play together. We're such good friends. Like the relationship was so strong. And it turned out that money was the hard one and my partner was the joyous one. And it felt so a reminder of like the things that get in the way of our dyads that are not actually fundamentally about the systemics of our dyad. And so it was really beautiful.
This is why we love blind constellations, to upend these official stories or what you're revealing, which is our insecurities, right? Right. It doesn't always turn out this way, but every once in a while, the message is just like, it's fine.
Yeah, and a reminder that I'm like, oh, money and partnership is a hard thing, but it doesn't mean the partnership is a hard thing sometimes. So that was my takeaway.
Awesome. Thank you. That's great. Thanks, Liz. Sounds like you kind of wanted a third representative, but I only gave you two. One more share. Let me go. If people have to dash, but I just want at least one more share before we go. Yulia.
I also did one about money, and it was really amazing how playful and happy the money is. Just like so joyful once you get through all those ancestral difficulties you have with it. Yeah.
Were there any sentences that were especially evocative with money for you?
Yeah, I kind of had to come up with mine because I don't know if any classic ones are really that many. It was, I have space for you. And first it was like, I have a little space for you, but then I promised that I will keep opening it. And that was really good for the money to hear. And then I acknowledged, I know my ancestors were afraid of you and I choose a different fate.
So that's a little bit custom and a little bit,
yeah,
little bit original. That's nice.
Yeah, and then I just did the one that really resonated was at the end, you're mine.
That's a classic. I mean, that can apply to a lot of relationships, right? Yeah. Or a simple version, we belong to each other. Yeah. 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 Nice. Folks, I would love another half hour to just keep asking questions and sharing and having these experiences. Shavasti does his own healing sentences workshop, and he talks about healing sentences as transmissions. And I do think what we notice here is if the sentence is timed, it's at the right time, and said with our dignity, it does feel like we're opening up to a resource that's way past our capacities as facilitators and as clients seeking help. Like there's something coming in to reorder and therefore make better. We're tapping into something bigger. And I hope you all got a little bit of a taste of that. And it's been really fun playing with you. So before you leave, just take a moment. We've been together 2 hours. I talked a little bit and you did a couple of little exercises. Allow to come into your heart a gift, an image, a sentence that is your takeaway, your gift for having shown up for the last 2 hours. Just take a moment and notice your takeaway. Let yourself have that. And I'm going to invite everyone to unmute and we'll have a messy goodbye. And if you want your word or phrase to layer with everybody else, but let's just have a little cacophony of what you received and a goodbye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leslie and everyone.
A boundary place.
Bye.
Thank
I
you.
have space for you.
Bye-bye.
See you next
Sparkly
time.
love.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.